Familiar with the Bible, you've likely heard of the 12 tribes of Israel. But how much do we truly know about these tribes and their fates? From almost the very start of the Hebrew Bible's historical narrative, the 12 tribes are the most frequent and enduring way to define the people of Israel. Okay, a quick look into the Bible. You see, between Genesis 29 and 35, the patriarch Jacob has 12 sons. Before the end of Genesis, these sons travel to Egypt. The 12 sons of Jacob, also known as Israel, went to Egypt due to a severe famine in Canaan. This story is detailed in the latter chapters of Genesis. Jacob's son Joseph, who had been sold into slavery by his jealous brothers, rose to a position of power in Egypt, becoming the Pharaoh's chief advisor. When the famine struck, Joseph's brothers traveled to Egypt to buy grain. After revealing his identity to them, Joseph invited his entire family to settle in Egypt to escape the famine. Thus Jacob and his sons, along with their families, moved to Egypt, where they were provided for by Joseph. 400 years later, their descendants, now 12 tribes, follow Moses in a grand exodus. They conquer Canaan and divide the land into 12 parts. They are then led by judges, followed by kings David and Solomon. According to 1 Kings 11, the kingdom of Israel then splits in two. This division is described in tribal terms. 10 tribes form the northern kingdom, retaining the name Israel, while the remaining tribes form a new kingdom called Judah. What follows is disaster. 200 years later, the Assyrians conquered the kingdom of Israel and exiled its people, who supposedly never returned. This event sparked the legend of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. What became of them remains a mystery. Although the Bible itself scarcely addresses this topic, people have speculated about it for thousands of years. Did they remain in Assyria or venture deeper into Asia? Did they migrate to Africa, as some Ethiopians believe? Or did they cross into some mythical land beyond the legendary river Sambation? Alongside these legends about the possible fate of the 10 lost tribes, numerous groups have claimed descent from Israel, often asserting they are one or more of these lost tribes. Mainstream scholars suggest that while deportations occurred both before and after the destruction of Israel, 722 to 720 BCE, they were less extensive than a straightforward reading of the Bible might suggest. During the earlier Assyrian invasions, large-scale deportations did take place in the Transjordan and Galilee, resulting in the loss of entire tribes such as Reuben, Gad, Dan, and Naphtali, who are never mentioned again. However, the region of Samaria, being larger and more populous, experienced a different fate. The cities of Samaria and Megiddo were mostly left intact, and the rural areas were generally spared. Additionally, according to the Book of Chronicles, King Hezekiah of Judah invited survivors from the tribes of Ephraim, Zebulun, Asher, Issachar, and Manasseh to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover, indicating that many people remained in the area. Researchers believe the modern Samaritan community, which claims descent from Ephraim, Manasseh, Levi, and until 1968 Benjamin, primarily originates from the tribes that continue to live in the region. Some theories propose that some Israelites joined the southern tribes in the Kingdom of Judah, although this is debated. The Israelites who were deported are thought to have assimilated with the local populations. For example, the New Standard Jewish Encyclopedia states, "In historical fact, some members of the 10 tribes remained in the land of Israel, where apart from the Samaritans, some of their descendants long preserved their identity among the Jewish population. Others were assimilated, while others were presumably absorbed by the last Judean exiles. 597-586 BCE were deported to Assyria. Unlike the Judeans of the southern kingdom, who survived a similar fate 135 years later, they soon assimilated. Even today, self-proclaimed Israels can be found worldwide, a phenomenon unprecedented in the history of any other identity. What's behind this? Let's begin with the historical roots of the legend. Are the 12 tribes of Israel historically accurate? Historians debate this question. Evidence suggests there were indeed some tribal entities in ancient times, but the exact number of tribes and their names vary depending on which biblical text you consult. For instance, Deuteronomy 33, known as the Blessing of Moses, purportedly blesses all the tribes of Israel but omits the tribe of Simeon. Perhaps the most significant example is found in Judges chapter 5, known as the Song of Deborah, which many scholars consider the oldest text in the Hebrew Bible. This chapter recounts a conflict between the king of Canaan and several tribes mentioned by name. However, only 10 tribes are mentioned, including a few not mentioned as tribes elsewhere in the Bible, like the tribe of Gilead. Furthermore, Judges 5 notably excludes the tribes commonly associated with the kingdom of Judah, Levi, Simeon, and notably Judah itself. Strikingly, Judah is absent from our earliest sources. This is significant because the majority of descriptions of a specifically 12-tribe Israel were not composed in the northern kingdom, but in the southern kingdom of Judah. Following Assyria's conquest of the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah endured for another 136 years, until Babylon's conquest in 586 BCE. While this event resulted in another exile, it was not permanent. After the Persians conquered the Babylonians, the Judahites were permitted to return home and rebuild their lives. Over time, their descendants evolved into the Jewish people. It was during this period, spanning from 722 to after the Babylonian exile, that much of what we now know as the Hebrew Bible was composed and edited by the people of Judah. Many scholars now propose that the vision of the 12 tribes itself represents an idealized conception of a pan-Israel identity, crafted by Judah to incorporate and elevate their significance in Israel's history. While this narrative may not be entirely historical, it likely drew from an earlier, smaller tribal system that did exist in early Israel. In fact, some scholars question whether the early Judahites even initially identified as Israelites, or if it was a later development where Judahites adopted and adapted an Israelite identity. The invention of an idealized 12-tribe system may have played a crucial role in shaping this identity. Addressing this issue, it's noteworthy that 2 Kings 17 doesn't even specify how many tribes of Israel were lost. Ultimately, the legend of the 10 lost tribes emerged as a later fabrication, a creation of early Jewish and Christian writers who exaggerated the exiled Israelites as a vast multitude and speculated about their fate. Now let's delve into those subsequent speculations, because even today, when pondering the question of what happened to the 10 lost tribes, many individuals offer specific answers and even claim descent from one or more of these tribes. Why did the legend of the 10 lost tribes become such a significant phenomenon for numerous people in later history? Let me introduce a book that extensively covers this fascinating topic. It's a new release and is available on Amazon. We will pin the link as the first comment below this video so you can easily check it out. The author of this compelling book is Dr. Andrew Tobolowsky, an assistant professor of religious studies at the College of William and Mary. Dr. Tobolowsky is a recognized expert on Israelite history and the 12 tribes tradition. His latest book, The Myth of the 12 Tribes of Israel, provides a fresh perspective on the historical process of becoming Israel. It explores how identities were constructed by adapting the 12 tribes tradition. Spanning thousands of years, the book includes case studies from the Hebrew Bible, the Samaritans, medieval lost tribe legends, the Mormons, and the Beta Israel of Ethiopia. Challenging the conspiracy theory-dominated discourse, this book offers rigorous scholarship and argues that the Hebrew Bible's vision of a tribal Israel is a Judahite construct, shaped after the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom. This suggests that Judah was the first to use the 12 tribes tradition to form an Israelite identity. Judah utilized the tradition is quite similar to how other groups have done so throughout history. Let's explore some of these examples from Tobolowsky's book, starting with the people known as the Samaritans, or Samaritan Israelites. The Samaritans are a religious group of about 1,000 people, living mainly in the town of Holon on the outskirts of Tel Aviv and near their holy site Mount Gerizim in the Palestinian territory of the West Bank. It was long believed that the Samaritans descended from foreigners brought into Israel by the Assyrians after their conquest, an idea stemming from 2 Kings chapter 17. This passage claims that the region was resettled by colonists who were eventually taught to worship God, though their foreign influence corrupted their worship practices. However, the Samaritans themselves have always maintained that they are direct descendants of Israel, presenting a different vision of Israel's history compared to Judaism. The Samaritans worship one God but believe that Mount Gerizim, not Jerusalem, is God's holy site. They also have a version of the Pentateuch that differs from the one found in the Hebrew Bible. In recent years, historians have confirmed that the Samaritans' claim to Israelite ancestry is correct. They indeed descend from ancient Israelites who were never exiled from the northern kingdom. The account in 2 Kings 17 now appears to be an anti-Samaritan passage, aimed at delegitimizing the Samaritans' claim to Israelite identity. This indicates that even in the ancient world and outside of the Hebrew Bible, different groups with legitimate claims to Israelite ancestry existed. These groups utilized the same tradition of the 12 tribes to construct varying visions of Israel, sometimes even in opposition to each other, as seen when comparing the Samaritan Pentateuch with the Hebrew Bible's Pentateuch. In other words, as I mentioned in another video, the Samaritan Israelites don't so much tell a different history of Israel as they tell a counter-history. Their story contains the same elements but is arranged to counter the Judahite narrative of the Hebrew Bible and construct their own vision of Israelite identity. Our next case study examines medieval legends linked to the mythical king Prester John. Prester John was thought to be a priest king of the East with a mighty army that would one day rescue the European Crusaders. A medieval text called The Letter of Prester John claims that the lost tribes live on his border, and part of his role is to control and contain them unless they break through his defenses and destroy the world, a legend reflecting varieties of medieval anti-Semitism. Tobolowsky argues that these medieval legends became a framework for how Europeans understood the world and other societies they encountered. Whenever Europeans encountered new people, they asked the same question: which biblical people group is this? The lost tribes were a common answer, but there were others. Europeans also looked to the family of nations passage in Genesis 10, which describes the whole world as descendants of Noah's 3 sons. This framework was evident when Europeans first encountered the Mongols in the 13th century. Initially, Europeans theorized that the armies of Prester John had arrived to aid the Crusades. However, as the Mongols seemed more threatening, it became common to imagine them as the lost tribes of Israel, here to bring about the end of the world. These myths also appeared in the stories of individual explorers during this period. Eldad Hadani, a Jewish merchant and traveler, arrived in North Africa in the late 9th century, claiming to come from the lost tribe of Dan. Benjamin of Tudela, a Jewish traveler from Spain, went east and returned with stories of the mighty free Israelites of Asia. Search for the lost 10 tribes of Israel led to various explorations, including the New World. From the time of Columbus, some believed the indigenous people of the Americas were the lost tribes of Israel, a theory known as the Jewish Indian or Hebraic Indian theory. This idea was supported by figures like Benjamin Rush, who even instructed Lewis and Clark to look for evidence during their expedition. The Book of Mormon is a notable expression of this theory, describing how a group from the tribe of Manasseh traveled to America and became part of the native population. Initially, Mormons saw themselves as Gentiles converting the lost tribes, but later believed they were Israelites with potential Israelite ancestry among converts. The Beta Israel community of Ethiopian Jews, numbering about 170,000 mostly in Israel, is another case study. Their story involves building an Israelite identity in Ethiopia, supported by legends such as the Kebra Nagast, which tells of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba's son Menelik, who brought Israelite leaders and the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia. The Solomonic dynasty, claiming descent from Menelik, ruled Ethiopia until 1974. The Beta Israel saw themselves as Israelites distinct from Ethiopian Christians due to their Jewish roots. Their identification as the lost tribe of Dan was reinforced in the 19th century by Jewish travelers influenced by medieval traveler Eldad Hadani. This identification helped gain recognition by Israel's rabbinic court in the 1970s, illustrating the adaptability of the 12 tribes tradition. Actually, the tradition in Ethiopia was focused on internal politics and society, especially concerning the foundation of the Solomonic dynasty. However, in the 20th century, the 12 tribes tradition enabled the Beta Israel to align themselves with a broader vision of Israel, recognized by the global Jewish community. This shift facilitated their move from Ethiopia to the State of Israel, where the majority of the Beta Israel community now resides.
Around 300 Ethiopian immigrants were welcomed by a delegation of officials Thursday at Israel's international airport, a move by the government to honor its 2015 pledge to reunite Ethiopian families of Jewish lineage split between the two countries via a unification program, as they are not recognized as Jewish in Israel. My wife Sarah and myself were standing there with tears in our eyes. When you see the Olim immigrants, our brothers, Ethiopian Jews, disembark from the plane with baskets like we remember, like I remember in my childhood, they disembark and touch the ground of Eretz Israel, and the mother bows down and kisses the ground, carrying a baby girl named Yerushalayim and another baby girl named Esther. Esther and Jerusalem come to Jerusalem. This is the essence of the Jewish story, the essence of the Zionist story. The Struggle for Ethiopian Aliyah activist group estimates some 7,000 Ethiopian Jews still remain in Ethiopia.
This exploration shows that the question of what happened to the 10 lost tribes yields diverse answers. Many groups have adopted an Israelite identity by claiming descent from various tribes, such as Ephraim or Dan. The Hebrew Bible's silence on the fate of most of these tribes makes these claims more plausible, leaving room for their identification in various forms and locations. The tradition of the 12 tribes provides multiple options for claiming Israelite identity, which leads us to Tobolowsky's research on genealogies. Genealogies in the Bible, though often seen as tedious, are crucial to Tobolowsky's argument. Scholars differentiate between linear genealogies, which trace a direct line from father to son, and segmented genealogies which describe entire family trees. An example of a segmented genealogy is found in Genesis 10, which details the descent of humanity from Noah's 3 sons. The segmented structure of the 12 tribes tradition allows for the adoption of an Israelite identity in various contexts. Israel's division into 12 tribes means it can be further divided, not just between Israel and Judah or Israel and Assyria, but globally, from Ethiopia to North America. This division facilitates stories of Israelite lineage, such as a group from the tribe of Manasseh migrating to America and becoming a large population. While some claims to Israelite lineage have more historical grounding, many groups are essentially placing themselves on branches of the genealogical tree. This widespread identification with Israel is fueled by the desirability of being part of God's chosen people, the role of Israel in biblical prophecies, and the prestige associated with this ancient identity. Consequently, there is a global fascination with the whereabouts and future of the people of Israel, resulting in numerous self-proclaimed Israels, an unprecedented phenomenon in history. For centuries, most of the world was unaware that a community of black Jews existed in Ethiopia. Even after contacts had been made between European Jews and later Israeli Jews, knowledge of the Ethiopian Jews was scant. It was not until the early 1980s and the famine in North Africa that drove many Jews to seek an escape route in the Sudan that the Beta Israel became widely known. At the same time, the Ethiopian Jews were equally unaware that Jews lived anywhere else, and were at least as shocked to learn of the existence of white Jews as the Europeans were to discover black Jews. As noted in the quotation, the Ethiopian Jews were generally referred to as falashas by their neighbors. This is a pejorative term meaning strangers or immigrants that was nevertheless widely used by outsiders as well. Throughout this manuscript, references are made to the falashas, usually with no negative connotation. I have not changed the usage of others, but restricted my own references to the neutral Ethiopian Jews, or the community's preferred designation, Beta. Could the Beta Jews be the reason we have depictions of a black Jesus? Could this also explain why the Ethiopian Bible is not widely used or accepted as canonical? In our next video, we'll explore the true reasons behind the Ethiopian Bible's lack of acceptance, and why Vladimir Putin displayed a vault containing an image of a black Jesus. Subscribe to uncover the truth behind these mysteries. Thanks for watching.